What tissues are considered fluid tissues? Blood and urine. Lymph, right? So blood and lymph are considered fluid tissues, right? Which type of tissue lines internal and external surfaces? Epithelium, right? True or false? Epithelium is vascularized. False, right? It's non-vascularized, right? It's serviced through what process? From the underlying tissue. Through diffusion, right? From the underlying, what kind of tissue? Connected, right? So we'll get specific when we get into the skin stuff, right? What type of tissue is excitable but moves the body or substances within the body? Muscle tissue, right? What type of tissue is excitable and excites other cells? Nervous tissue, right? Synovial membranes, connective tissue membranes that are synovial membranes. Within these synovial capsules, the cells there secrete synovial fluid. The viscosity, the viscosity of that synovial fluid is due to a particular protein. You guys know what it is? Starts with an H. Excuse me? Nobody? It's hyaluronan, is what it is. What protein makes mucus thick? What? Mucin. There you go, mucin. That's an easy one, right? The basal, in epithelium, basal cells secrete a part of the basement membrane. The basal cells secrete which part of it? The what lamina? Basal lamina. The underlying connective tissue cells secrete which lamina? Excuse me? Reticular lamina, right? Epithelial cells that are usually specialized for secretion and absorption typically are shaped like what? Cuboidal. They're typically cuboidal, right? Glandular epithelial cells are typically what shape? Excuse me? No. No. They're usually columnar, and they also have what on them? Cilia, right? So they're also ciliated, right? These endocrine cells are called what? Starts with G. Goblet, yeah, goblet cells. Out of the three types of secretion, exocrine, merocrine, and apocrine, which one causes the least amount of damage to a cell? Excuse me? Yes, it is merocrine. I'm sorry, I said it's merocrine, apocrine, and holocrine. What did I say? Did I say ecrine? I think I said it. I don't know. One of the ways that we classify our connective tissues is by looking at the contents of the ground substance, specifically what type of fibers? Protein fibers, right? There's different types of protein fibers, right? The ones that look like ropes, are which ones? Collagen, right? The ones that look like nets are ones that look like nets, reticulin, right? Ground substance for most connective tissues is typically fluid in nature, but there's one exception. It's solid. With what? With which tissue? Bone. What is what do we call embryonic connective tissue? In an adult, you'll find patches throughout your body. Mesenchyme, right? Mesenchyme. Cells that produce fibers are called what? Fibroblasts, right? Fibroblasts. Cells that store fat are called adipocytes, right? Mast cells release cytoplasmic granules. These granules, there's two types. What are they? They're the ones that mount the allergic response. Histamines and what? Heparin. Heparin is good. In tendons, would you find dense regular or dense irregular connective tissue? Dense regular, right? That means that the fibers are arranged in a parallel fashion, right? For the most part. Let's see. The cartilage that we find in our between our ribs and the sternum and on our nose, that is what kind? What cartilage? Hyaline cartilage, right? You also find it at the ends of the bones, right? What kind of cartilage makes up our ears? Elastic cartilage, right? True or false? Bone is non-vascularized. False. Quite the opposite. It's extremely vascularized, right? Outermost layer of the integument is? Outermost layer of the integument is the? Excuse me? No. Of the integument. The epidermis. Now, outermost layer of the epidermis. Stratum corneum. It's called corneum because of cornification. That means that you have extreme what? Keratinization, right? So there's a lot of keratin in those cells. The big distinction between the dermis and the hypodermis is that there are more of what type of cells in the hypodermis? Adipocytes, right? So adipocytes. In thick skin, there is a layer between the outermost layer, which is the corneum, and the granulosum, and that layer is the stratum lucidum, right? The only layer of the epidermis with mitotically active cells is the basal layer, the stratum basale, right? Stratum basale. Now, these germ cells are cuboidal, right? But as they're pushed upwards, they become what shape? Squamous, right? Squamous. Finger-like projections of the dermis that cement the bond between the epidermis and the dermis are referred to as the dermal papillae, right? Dermal papillae are obvious where? They're found throughout the skin, but they're always at the palms and the soles, right? What cells in the epidermis are sensitive to touch? Merkel cells. What cells produce our main pigment? Melanocytes. Right? I said it like that because I didn't want to say melanin, right? Now, melanin, there's two types. If it's brown or black, it's what? It's U, melanin. If it's red, then it's pheomelanin, right? Which layer of the epidermis has the most cells? You can use the same answer again, by the way. Corneum, sternum corneum, yeah. Living or dead? Dead, right? What protein not only strengthens our skin, our epidermal cells, but also is where we derive fingernails and hair from? Keratin, right? Keratin. The more outer layer of the dermis is referred to as the what layer? No, the other one. Papillary, right? Papillary, again, remember the dermal papillae are formed by the papillary layer, right? So the deeper one is the, what was it, sir? What's the deeper one? And anybody else can answer. Reticular, right? Reticular, right? I mean, technically, if you consider the hypodermis as part of the dermis and not a separate thing, the deepest layer would be the hypodermis. But listen to how I phrase the question. The deepest layer of the dermis, right? Got it? The other way I would have said the deepest layer of the integument, right? And that would have been hypodermis, right? Irregular, usually benign, are moles or freckles, right? Moles and freckles, you should say. Eccrine sweat glands are found on what parts of the skin? Excuse me? Okay, yes, they are part of the epidermis, but I mean like on your body. Where do you find eccrine glands? They're the ones that secrete the watery sweat. Everywhere, right? High concentrations on the palms, the soles, and on your head, right? But everywhere on your skin, your palm sweat, right? The ones that produce the thicker sweat, right? The stickier one, those are called wet glands. No. Still talking about sweat. Apocrine, right? So these are apocrine. Apocrine sweat causes body odor because it provides what type of food to bacteria? Remember, it's milky, thicker sweat because it has what in it? Proteins, right? As opposed to just water and ions that are in the eccrine sweat, right? Usually, what substance is found in antiperspirants that blocks sweat ducts? Aluminum, right? Now, what kills bacteria? Change in pH. Change in pH, right? acne infections occur in the epidermis because the bacteria are feeding off of what kind of plug? A sebum plug, right? So lipids are the food that's being provided here, right? What are the bacteria genuses that typically cause acne, inflammations? Staphylococcus is one, and the other one is named after the acid. It's propionic bacteria, right? Because they produce propionic acid. Remember I was talking about feet smelling like vinegar? That's the propionic acid, right? His face. The active form of vitamin D is? No, the active form of vitamin D is calcitriol, right? Cholecalciferol is the inactive one, right? But it's derived from what? What? Derived from cholesterol. Derived from cholesterol, right? What's the most common type of skin cancer? No. Nobody? Excuse me? No, that's not. Most common is basal cell carcinoma. Which is the most aggressive? Huh? No. What is it? Squamous cell carcinoma. Now, which is the most fatal? Melanomas, right? Which ones look the most benign? Melanomas, right? That's one of the reasons why it's so fatal, right? The other is because melanomas are highly what? It means that they spread. Metastatic, right? Metastasis occurs easily. What's the best way to remove skin cancer? Well, to remove it, right? To get an excision, right? Acne scars, chickenpox scars, things like that, typically lead to depressed scars. What do we refer to those as? They're Nobody? If they're depressed, they're called what? Atrophic. Atrophic, right? That means that literally means that they're depressed, right? Now, extremely hypertrophic scars are called what? Is when they leave a big bump. Keloids, right? So keloids, right? What's the medical term for a bed sore? Decubitus ulcer. Decubitus ulcer. Specialized calluses that form because of constant elliptical motion are called what? Corns, right? Corns. Okay, so like that. Questions like that. Do you have any questions? No? I don't care why you haven't gotten it yet. If you haven't gotten your exam, please come get it. There's no judgment here. Again, I don't care why you haven't gotten it. If it was at the testing center, if you took it here, you just haven't been in class or whatever, come get your grade, please. I still have exams, all right? So again, like I said, no judgment here. I'm not going to carry this